or I think that we are ready to start. Wow, we have a lot of people today. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We have the pleasure to be with Julia Klein, Mireya Gallardo, and Jorge Recharte. They are from Julia, sorry, is from Mountain Sentinels Alliance. Mireya and Jorge are from the Instituto de Montaña from Peru, and they are like today here for sharing the insights in different projects that they have and different joint efforts that they have towards transdisciplinary approaches in climate adaptation and sustainable futures in the Andes. Thank you so much for being here. So Julia, we can start with you.
Sure. And thank you for coming, and you'll see some of our students. Oh, wow. This is great.
Excellent. We have more chairs outside. I can grab them as well.
There's another one.
Okay.
Here's this one.
So our students, these are students from our capstone class.
Nice.
Who are, some of them are doing some thematic analysis from the event that we'll share about today, and some of them are doing some work related to what we saw for the field trip of that event. So the students wanted to come and learn from Jorge and Mirella directly as well. So thanks for coming, everyone. So today we, Jorge, Mirella, and myself are going to talk about the role of local knowledge and partnerships to advance climate adaptation and sustainable futures. And oops, so it's not advancing. Do I just do this? Okay, there we go. This is just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'll just introduce folks very briefly to Mountain Sentinels Alliance. Then we'll share about an event we co-developed with another organization, ABA Ayacucho, called Hatun TInkuy. Then I'll hand it over to Jorge and Mirella to talk about Instituto de Montaña, our wonderful partner and long-term collaborator, Green Climate Fund, and another initiative, and then we'll have a discussion. So just to introduce you to Mountain Sentinels, we're an organization. We've been in existence for about 10 years, but just the past couple of years funded on a new NSF grant, and we are Indigenous rights holders, academic community, knowledge holders, practitioners, educators, students representing 6 continents and 50 countries, and we're trying to accelerate transformations to sustainability across the world's mountains. These folks are part of this is our PI team. Myself, Dominique David Chavez, I'm here, Robin Reed, also from CSU, Dr. Kimberly Rowan, who is at the University of Colorado, Denver, and Dr. Catherine Tucker from the University of Florida. We also have a larger leadership team that's comprised of Rowena Davis, who's sitting here today, our program manager, Jennifer Wolf and Shanta Meha are from Project Mosaic, an Indigenous consulting firm that we work with. Tamara Layden she just defended her PhD, so hopefully some of you got to see that work. And Jacob is our communications and community director. So we are comprised of 18 different partner networks across 6 continents. Instituto de Montaña is one of those networks. And this is sort of from our proposal. It's a little more formal, but our goals, shared goals and visions across those 18 networks were to transform unsustainable pathways in mountains into sustainable ones, create a diverse network with collective impact, provide unique opportunities and training for the next generation. And then in our proposal, we co-developed some different working groups, but those have evolved since we've had events together on the ground with communities. One key part of what we're doing, and that's what I'm really going to focus on today, is that we're establishing these learning and action collaboratories or collabs, which are hubs for learning and sharing, experimentation and action. And we have them in North, South America, in Asia, and Europe as well, and Africa. And Instituto Montaña is our lead coordinator of the collaboratories. So we do a bunch of things. We have a fellows program, we do synthesis work. We also hold these summits. So this is just an image of our summit that we initially held in 2022 in Basalt, Colorado. And one thing I just wanted to share that came out of, or that we did during that first meeting, having problems with this, is Dr. Dominique David Chavez applied her relational science model for us to co-develop our shared values as a group. We had at this meeting, we had about 40 people. It was more folks from North America, community members, Indigenous folks from mountains, and academics. And so we, based on, Dominique worked with one of her students, and we took what this is a graphic recording, and they did sort of more thematic analysis, kind of what our students are doing for Hatun TInkuy. And we co-developed our core values, shared it back with our community. So we have them now, our core values, but we consider that a living document. And so you'll see that at our Hatun TInkuy meeting in Peru, we further added to those values. So Hatun TInkuy was something that we co-developed with Jorge and Mirella. It was the Mountain People Summit that we held in Huaraz, Peru last December. We've been, I've been working with Instituto de Montaña, and you'll learn more about them in a bit if you don't know about them already. They're just an amazing organization, just the most dedicated, brilliant group of people. And so we've been lucky to be able to collaborate with them over time on proposals and at the climate change UNFCCC meetings and such. And so it was really exciting to have this opportunity to work with them as well. And just, they came up with the title, along with, they're working with, when we talked about having this meeting and just working on this proposal together. And Jorge, feel free to jump in. I don't want to speak for you, so, but Jorge had mentioned that they had an Indigenous water network that they were trying to set up. And they were really excited to see that potentially this collaboration might be able to advance that work with that Indigenous network. And so a third partner in organizing this event, Hatun TInkuy, was ABA Ayacucho, which is a local organization or in the Southern Andes of Peru. So TInkuy in Quechua means point of encounter of forces that complement. So, for example, it's where two rivers merge or form a new one, and then Hatun in Quechua means elevated, high place, or superior. And so we were really trying to recognize the importance and need to elevate Indigenous knowledges to the center of science and policy dialogue for mountains. So I was going to share a little bit about what we did at the meeting. Jorge and Mirella, do you want to add anything about the context for this meeting, or?
Jorge, you're mute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, absolutely. We do have some comments to add to what Julia has said, and just to support the following of the ideas. If you can also please present the PowerPoint that is I think it's named Part 1, Hatun TInkuy, and I will start by saying that the design of the Hatun TInkuy was done in dialogue with these grassroots organizations called Bartolomé Aripailla, which is from a community called Quispillacta in Ayacucho, and the next one, and we did have a long-standing conversation, dialogue with them, and a few activities conducted together. But this is the organization that has really been a leader in promoting indigenous knowledge and cultural affirmation in Peru as a pathway to restore the vibrancy of Andean communities. And some of the some of the conversation we had with Ari Pailla was then shared with the Mountain Sentinels group, and we agreed on a set agenda. And I guess what I'm just presenting to complement what Julia said sort of has the purpose of putting on the table the elements that show us the potential of this Hatun TInkuy process, and in the establishment of a hub, a place of knowledge, run by indigenous communities, and but then also the challenges from the perspective of a nonprofit to really, promote this movement, which we think is very important. So that's the point. And then also, to the extent possible, to then give you an example of, how to connect these processes to the specific projects that Instituto de Montaña is doing, and we'll do that in the second part. So I wanted to mention that, the name is in Quechua for a reason, because it's a symbol, a sign of the commitment to really facilitate during the project the expression of local ideas and local values, which is also the essence of the Hatun, of the Mountain Sentinels approach, right? Also, we, as a result of really sort of not the demand, but the importance given by Bartolomé Paella, grassroots, to the dialogue of science and indigenous knowledge, is that we said exactly that's what the Mountain Sentinels is also about. So it was a really nice synergy, between the interest of, this leader grassroots organization and what the Mountain Sentinels wants to accomplish. Then it was also strongly, proposed by Bartolomé Paella, a grassroots group, that climate change was the key challenge faced by mountains. And also through dialogue, we agreed that social economic transformation together, with the new forms of management, these high altitude endangered ecosystems, was a need, but it was a need to really transform things. It cannot be business as usual. So the point is that the agenda, itself was set up together, by the three partners. And then in the next slide, please. I also wanted to reflect on some of the results, and this is, more like if you want, a personal, my personal reading, but there was a really strong, appreciation, both among communities from Ancash, but from other parts of Peru, for the opportunity to meet and to converse about challenges, solutions that are already taking place, the exchange, the sense of pride that they had, and also the expectations. It was also time for them to share their demands, like the expansion of mining industry in mountains, the lack of government support, and things like that. So that's something that happened. It was not necessarily anticipated, but it was there, and it was the political dimension of the demand of communities came together with the sense of, okay, great, we have a lot of ideas that we want to put forward, but so there were also expectations as a result of the meeting that were raised, like expanding the meeting to include other communities and stakeholders, mobilize resources for practical action and climate change solutions, and also use these type of events to make more visible their demands. So there is a political dimension, and so this also raises questions. Is this also what, how to converse these two dimensions, the political interest of communities and also the core interest of the Hatun TInkuy process to place indigenous knowledge and the dialogue with science at the core of these mountain challenges. And then in the next slide, I also would like to point to some of the challenges that we have in terms of, okay, this was a really interesting event, lots of good results, excellent dialogue, a lot of potential, but how do we, leverage the results, and how do we continue with this, So sort of the message is that it's clear for us that it's, and I wanted to share this, no, there is not a single, straight line connecting what happened at the Hatun TInkuy and then what we would really like to do next in terms of action. And this is because the nature of an organization like ours, and I must say also Aba Yacucho, no, it's an even small organization, very local, very successful, very well known, not only in Peru but even internationally. But still, no, there is uncertainty. We operate on restricted funding projects, or projects that allow you to do what you signed for. But we will continue with the partnership with Grassroots, the Bartolomé Aripay organization, and that is something great. But we need to find out how exactly and what is the more strategic next step together with them. There are crowdfunding mechanisms that we've been using, and we may again, try to use. Like, we currently have a global giving platform access to support other projects that are very closely related to the Hatun TInkuy spirit, and we may, try to present a project in that platform for fundraising. But we need to convey a convincing idea that communities talking about these problems is as important, if not even more important, than the small tangible actions that small donors through these platforms like to support. Where is the evidence? No, what is our evidence? Is one question that we need to resolve. And then also wanted to say that when we embarked in the Hatun TInkuy and this experiment, we also keep in mind that we have projects in which we want to insert this approach of indigenous knowledge and the dialogue with science and the importance of making more visible and potent the ideas, and not just the knowledge as a sort of like an instrumental, here is a technology, practiced by local communities, but the whole intellectual process by which groups like the Bartolomé Aripay are thinking the whole thing. They're intellectualizing, very powerfully the whole set of problems that academics are also dealing with. So it's a really wonderful opportunity, but it's challenging, to incorporate this whole thing in new projects. But we are, so we are trying also to create opportunities for continuity through our own projects. So we do have starting this year a project in Ancash that will provide funds directly to communities over the next 3 years, that communities that will propose their own climate change adaptation solutions, and they will receive the funding directly so that they operate the project. So we are the channel to locate those monies in the field. And an organization or a hub like Hatun TInkuy, as it prospers, it could be a source of inspiration for these communities. But then also in Ancash itself, we're also cooperating with a French agency, the IRD, International Research and Development Group from France, in a project with dealing with what is called the new lands, or the pro-glacial environments that are emerging as glaciers retreat. And the whole project is based on the incorporation of science and local knowledge to find solutions to these places. So there is uncertainty, and we of course have resources, but still we really cannot be 100% sure of how the whole process will evolve. In that sense, I was saying that at the beginning there's not one straight line between Hatun TInkuy, great, what a fantastic opportunity, what are the immediate next steps that we would most desire to implement. It's not a straight line. So it's a long-term process. That's the point. And it requires multiple elements to succeed. It requires the vision that I think we have, but then it requires consistency, partnerships, leadership from not just our organizations, but mountain communities. The people who really embarked in this adventure. but then experience, and that experience has to be converted into lessons, evidence, and then we need to communicate this whole thing, you know, so that it's visible and it's the voices of local peoples that are convincing themselves. We also need research, time, financial resources, and so on and so forth. So it was a fantastic experience. That's our, you know, perspective from Instituto de Montaña, but it's, you know, the process and the challenges are there, no? So I would end there, Julia, my comments, in order to reserve the following 20 minutes or maybe less. I think we have like 18 minutes for like giving an example of one of the complex projects in which we are involved and trying to insert the indigenous knowledge processes. And that hopefully will, you know, serve the discussion of, you know, how to fit these wonderful events into, you know, the actual institutional frameworks of projects in which we are involved. And for that, I will, Mirela will continue with the presentation of the Puna Resilient Project.
Excuse me, Jorge, can I just share a little bit more about Hatun TInkuy? Just to share with people here a little bit like what it was like and what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Mirella?
Yes, of course, Julia, go ahead.
Just to give people in the room like a sense of like what we actually did during that event. And I just have a lot of pictures and I can go through them fairly quickly. See, I have to get back to Zoom. Just to kind of give you all a sense again of just drawing on what Jorge was talking about, things that we did as a group. We engaged in ritual and deep introductions. We revisited these principles and core values, and we're going to be following up to expand our core values because not all these communities were at our initial meeting, but we want to bring in those core values that were expressed at that meeting. Here's just an example of a few of those. This was probably what people said was one of their favorite days, where we went and did some on the ground learning. We went on a field trip that had many components. This is Instituto de Montaña has been working with a community and doing a lot of different things, reforestation. There's a bioremediation project here because there's problems with melting glaciers and water contamination. Folks went up to the glacier. It was a pretty intense hike, but people were super happy. And this is where Jorge mentioned this, this picture here of the llamas is from our French colleague Anaïs, who's working with Jorge, but she gave a talk about how they're using llamas to help the ecosystem development of these proglacial landscapes where those glaciers have receded from. We ate, the local community hosted us and fed us cuy as well, just kind of the local food of honor. We had lots of different knowledge exchanges. Dr. Dominique and Tamara talked about indigenous knowledge and data sovereignty and did some exercises around that. We had some of our fellows come because we have a fellows program. So this is Abriti Mockton. She's actually from Darjeeling, India, doing a PhD at Penn State. And so she and Dominique are now connected in a mentor-mentee relationship, which is part of our program. We had Karina Branson, some of you may know her. She's a CSU grad and she's a fantastic graphic recorder. And she actually worked with 2 local artists there in Moraz who to kind of work on graphic recording and to share with them. And they got really, really into it. And there was just tons of different ways of sharing knowledge. I want to mention quickly that, I don't know, I think it's about 3/4 of the group, or maybe at least half, were from communities within the Andes, but we did also have a colleague from our African hub from the mountains of Kenya. We had this person here is from the Yukon, and he was like so amazed at the field trip when he saw the glaciers. He was like, this looks like my home. So it was really neat knowledge sharing, and it had a regional piece that was really strong that Jorge expressed. And there was also kind of a global element to it as well. And then there was a lot of connecting through food and conversation and art and music. And people shared a lot of what IDM is working on. I think they'll show you next, a lot of the use of ancient practices to restore water under a changing climate. And so there were lots of different examples of people sharing from different parts of the Andes, you know, how they're dealing with climate change and how they're elevating their local and indigenous knowledges. And we learned about that a little bit from other parts of the world as well. And so this is kind of one of the graphic recordings from the final day. And this was where people decided we are going to continue together with this Hatun TInkuy Andino. And Jorge has already talked about the challenges of moving forward and kind of what our next steps will be. And he talked about some challenges for us. It included languages. We did have someone who was meant to translate into Quechua. And there was a bus accident, very tragic. So that was tragic. And then we had the logistics were kind of epic. And just from our perspective, like we have this NSF grant, and there's sort of, you saw those academic goals that we had, and you know, what people have to do to be a faculty at CSU, but our shared organizational goals within Instituto de Montaña and Mountain Sentinels aren't necessarily fully aligned with what NSF wants us to be doing and our academic institutions as well. But I think I'll just say one of the great opportunities and benefits that we saw was just this really great knowledge sharing, the relationship building. We're doing some analyses. Catherine Tucker's group has some students doing some of the participant reflections. And one thing they said is they wanted this to be a longer meeting. We thought we were taking people's time too much, but they wanted a longer meeting. But the energy, it was just an amazing projects that Instituto de Montaña, ABA, Ayacucho, and the other communities are doing. It was like amazing for hoping for the future. Okay, Mirella, please take it away.
Thank you, Julia. I wonder if you can please help us to project our Puna Resiliente.
Is the
Or should I do it?
No, I have it here. Don't worry.
Perfect, thank you. In this second part of the presentation, we will talk about the Resilient Puna project. We can still not see. Okay, now, thank you. This is a project that that's not that the other one, please.
Ah, okay.
This will Jorge will speak with this later. But we would like to talk about this Puna Resiliente project in Spanish. This is a project that upscale the experience of the mountain ecosystem-based adaptation project. One of the first projects worked with this approach globally and implemented by a group of partners, including the Instituto de Montaña in 4 Andean communities. It will be implemented now in 91 districts of the southern high Andean dry Puna ecosystem in 5 Peruvian regions. I don't know, do you have the presentation? Perhaps
No,
it's better.
no, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
don't worry. Here it is. Thank you.
I'm supposed to share it.
So this is the Resilient Puna project. I wanted to talk about the partners of the project. The Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation of Peru is one of them, and also the financing one. And after that, the Green Climate Fund is one of the most larger contributors, as well as the German cooperation and the Canadian cooperation. And this project will be implemented by the the German cooperation, by the Environmental Ministry, as well as the Agriculture Ministry, the Natural Protected Area Services, Profonampe, that it's facility, and we are also partners of the project as Instituto de Montaña. The objective of the project is to increase climate resilience in Peruvian South High Andes communities, ecosystems and livelihood by conserving and recovering ecosystems and promoting climate resilient value change with governance support. It began last year and will go to 29, closing the 2030. The estimated budget is around 84 million. Midagri and CERNAP, the Peruvian institution, are contributing with about a third of the budget. The Green Climate Fund, the most one, the larger budget, and the German and Canadian cooperation are also putting their part, contributing with their part. And this project will cover some GCF strategic areas like communities and vulnerable population, health, well-being, water and fuel security, and ecosystems and ecosystem services. We can say here that the Peruvian government doesn't prioritize the high Andean mountains population. Priorities in Peru are export, agriculture, and lots of funds are invested there. But this mountain regions are not that prioritized. This is a very good opportunity to upscale this approach of climate change adaptation with Andean indigenous communities. The climate problem is the higher temperatures that are already causing the loss of glaciers, rainfall and weather seasonal changes that deliver us to droughts and other climate problems that changes the patterns of rain it's a very important input for agriculture in the high mountains. These plus human activities like overgrazing and agricultural expansion, illegal extraction of natural resources, among others, are causing impacts in the water sources, wetlands and pastures that are drying up. Livestock are dying because of the weather as well, the climate. The crops are losing, the income is therefore lower. This is all can be all summarized in increasing the vulnerabilities of communities because of climate change. And this is the approach of the project to promote the access to private and public funding. This is one of the main inputs, the funding that will lead to hectares of wetlands and grasslands conserved and restored in high Andean zones. This will provide ecosystem services like water, soil, fodder, etc., and that support agricultural and livestock activities for the people in the mountains. This will cause diversification of diversified climate resilient livelihoods in terms mostly about camelids growing, high annual crops and others. And all of these will result in communities more resilient to climate change impacts with better market access and economic opportunities. The project has prioritized some EBA measures like the ones you can see in the left part of the image, and also some climate resilient value chains like camelids, alpaca, vicuña, high Andean crops, and they also define some complementary value chains like Kui, breeding, handicraft, community tourism, among others. The Puna facility will give some funds to communities and very small enterprises in 3 options. The first one is a non-reimbursable fund and will go to communities that have very not a huge link with the market. The option 2 will go to organizations that are more inserted in the markets, and the option 3 is a cooperation with Agroideas, a program from the Ministry of Agriculture. But what should these local initiatives contain? I mean, the project will promote ecosystem-based adaptation measures connected to value chains for increasing climate resilience. If we work on the ecosystem, a more healthier ecosystems, then we can have more water storage for the dry seasons, trying to compensate the loss of the glaciers and others. The initiative, the projects should be elaborated by communities in a participatory manner. And that's a way, like Jorge told us, how communities will propose. They themselves will propose the projects. The project also promotes the recovering of ancestral knowledge, the intergenerational dialogue, gender, intercultural, and intergenerational approaches. It will be monitored by community monitoring systems, and it will also give place for knowledge exchange among communities. I would like to stop here and give the floor to Jorge that will explain a bit more about community monitoring systems.
Yeah, thank you, Mirela. And if we can see the previous PowerPoint, was titled number 2, which has just the keywords. No, but the point really, I will be, brief in order to leave, as much time to the discussion as planned originally, But the point is that on the one hand, we have the Hatun TInkuy process, great experience. And I'm really glad that Julia showed all the pictures so that you could have an image of what happened there. Because I think it's going to be very, relevant to what we try to do in this other project. But so in order to illustrate that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the community monitoring component. And begin with, by saying that, you've seen these are complex projects, multiple donors, stakeholders, government agencies, etc. So there is a very strict mandate to implement this component. And the keywords that I wanted to emphasize with you in the next slide is that there is a menu of indicators. So we are mandated to put together as an organization, propose a menu of indicators. This is the portfolio of possible indicators. And this is designed by us, external stakeholders, to the communities. And then the next step is that this menu has to be approved. That means Mountain Institute, Instituto de Montaña has to propose, is to be approved, revised, improved, or veto, whatever, by the project stakeholders, by the agencies and the government, not the communities at this point. But the project at the same time mandates that communities will have this menu as a reference to select what are most relevant to them for the local initiative that they're implementing, and then adapt the indicators. It doesn't say more, the mandate, it just says local communities will use these indicators and will adapt them. But exactly what that means, not 100% clear. Then also must say that communities do not receive any monetary incentives for the monitoring itself, other than, of course, the grant, which is used for, for their benefit, for the concrete, tangible stuff that they need to do. So if you remember, Mirela mentioned that local communities will receive up to 100,000 euros or dollars over 2 years. And so therefore the monitoring itself, the framework, the formal framework is 2 years to monitor results. And results in terms of both the project itself or the transformations taking place in the landscape is, of course, just a fraction of what, the time period that would be needed for doing a proper assessment of changes, right? Also, another aspect of the project is that communities will receive technical support from a local nonprofit that will be part of the project, but with very, very limited funding, mostly to oversee the financial management of the resources, the money, and also provide acompañamiento, as we say in Spanish, be there, a number of days every month to see what happens there. Another aspect interesting, because it's not contradictory, but it's just part of the project, the way it's been designed, is that 80% of the projects must incorporate ancestral knowledge or ancestral technologies into their design. So, by logic, then the community monitoring system should also incorporate indigenous knowledge or indigenous manners, techniques of observing change, the traditional ways of observing change, of assessing results and evaluating what they see in their own, ways, and then, their own mechanisms for taking action. And I must say that these are not, clear at all. In the Andes, at least, these are aspects that have not been really researched, but that's the mandate of the project. No? And then also as part of the project, there will be, Mirela mentioned it, a set of community knowledge exchanges between communities or within communities. Within communities, elder people talking to younger people, and across communities exchanging experiences, both traditional knowledge, but also other, successful approaches that may not be based on indigenous knowledge or technologies. So in the next slide, we're seeing now the design of the strategies that we're proposing. How do we respond to these? And bear in mind that in doing these, we also already have, in our minds, in the back of our minds, the experience of Hatun TInkuy, which was very interesting. So the menu of indicators we propose will concentrate in results that are prioritized by communities, not in we will shield communities, if possible, from investing their time in monitoring performance indicators, tax activities, the financial aspects, and someone else has to do that. So just to, protect their priorities. They may also want to do that and participate in part, but we're proposing that they will concentrate in monitoring the immediate results that they get from implementing their activities, which are by, we will understand that those priorities will be their priorities because they chose from a menu of possible interventions which ecosystem-based adaptation and which economic, value chain they chose to concentrate on. And that's one thing. The other idea is to adapt indicators to a local context and give as much room as possible to, taking that menu and then adapting it as much as possible to the local context, using the input of local knowledge. Another idea is to like redesign the menu based on the field experience. So it's not a set menu of indicators or even processes of how to measure, but the protocols. But the idea that we propose to the larger group of stakeholders managing the project and involved in the project is that this should be community monitoring based on local interest should be treated as a development hypothesis. We think that this is the way it works and it's how the project is implementing it, but we need to prove that idea to observation and to the feedback, especially from local communities as they implement these local initiatives, right? Another idea is that these community monitoring mechanism should be seen as a capacity building proposal, right? So that they could, for instance, even formally, you know, the people who are engaged into doing this, those who choose, be recognized formally as indigenous monitors of mountain ecosystem-based adaptation solutions, so that they really, you know, graduate and gain a practical skill at the end of the process. Then we have to also solve the problem of the short-term monitoring, the 2-year problem, I call it. And the idea is there that if the data collected is of high quality, and then if the community is really engaged with that information, and for that I think that the experience in the Hatun TInkuy, the use of art and that sort of ways of visualizing results and discussions was really valuable, and we think we'll follow the same way. But then alliance with academic groups that are committed and understand the importance of dialogue with local knowledge could, you know, based on good 2 years data, can then, you know, easily support following up, you know, year 3, maybe at year 5, at year 10, to really assess, you know, socio-ecological changes, which require a long period of time. Then the other idea is giving importance to self-evaluation, again, to trying to solve the 2-year problem, because to the extent that we do that, the self-evaluation, you know, should use methods that are capable of really open up and expressing the whole set of local values of nature that may go beyond the narrow set of indicators or even the goals of the project that are, in a way, by mandate again, you know, restricted to ecosystem-based management, you know, improving your ecosystem services and how you link that to value chain, to your economy, your local economy. You know? But who knows, there might be very innovative valuations emerging from local communities after the 2-year experience. And then finally, the indigenous knowledge and ancestral land management technologies, how to incorporate it, is the methodology and how to do it in this kind of project is really something to be resolved. And the thinking there is that maybe Hatun TInkuy is perhaps, you know, could be a support mechanism for mechanisms, you know, like an umbrella, a place where these kinds of projects can go and see or participate, you know, in these kinds of, you know, discussions among communities. Because these will be discussions not just only, you know, intellectual, which are important, but also, you know, connected to practical implementation of projects. With that, I finish this, and just to you know, go back to the Hatun TInkuy and some questions for discussion that we sort of prepared together with the Mountain Sentinels team yesterday, is that the Hatun TInkuy, you know, has all these challenges to continue the dialogue between communities. It's not easy, you know, for communities, even within the same region, to get together, you know, or to by themselves find ways to connect and put time outside of the Hatun TInkuy space, you know. The opportunity cost for communities, for rural communities, is really high, you know, their time is really valuable. And so we need to find out how to respond to this challenge of helping communities get together. Another question for the discussion is that the Hatun TInkuy has great potential for collaboration and the sharing of ideas, but the mechanisms of how to move forward require long-term commitments. And what are the strategies, no, that we discussed briefly? Some ideas, but great to discuss them further. And then exactly, you know, how to use these Hatun TInkuy events and how to build the evidence that these conversations are important, these dialogues are important, and they have impact. We need evidence, no? And then, you know, very concretely, what are the possible synergies between Hatun TInkuy, the model, no? This sort of hub of indigenous knowledge, and large-scale projects like this one, but maybe many other ones. So those were the questions we thought we could leave with the group for discussion.
Thank you so much. Well, Yana, we can open the table to discussion, to comments, questions.
I have a question. Jorge, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hi, my name is Annie. I'm working with Asociación Ecosistemas Andinos and Acción Andina in Peru. And we're working to create a private conservation area with Akia in Ancash. So you have mentioned reforestation activities, and I was wondering if the Hatun TInkuy model could work with like the carbon market and in terms of funding mechanisms. Do you see any potential in tapping into, you know, the carbon market through the reforestation or even other like, you know, projects because related to ecosystem health that then sequester carbon? Because I know that the reforestation in the Andes is typically with the Cayuña, and that's a very slow growing tree. So it doesn't always align well with these carbon projects that want a quick turnaround. So with those partners I mentioned, we've just, you know, played with this a little bit. Sometimes we've received like corporate funding for a carbon offsetting project, but it just doesn't always seem like a good fit. And so I'm more wondering what your thoughts are there. And then in addition, the model you described today, like how it might inform that funding mechanism approach. So.
Well, my understanding of how, you know, I don't think we could sort of, you know, relate to your question is that, you know, the idea, and we did it in Hatun TInkuy 1, was to bring these projects and then open them for discussion, right? The exchange among communities. So if the Hatun TInkuy is, think of it, or that's the way we're thinking of it in terms of the future of Hatun TInkuy, is like a same way you have, you know, a conference by academics where you discuss issues, ethical aspects, you know, practical aspects, you know, methodologies, etc. That would be, you know, interesting, like to like in a Hatun TInkuy, have that discussion by communities with participation of other stakeholders, but, you know, run by them of what do they think, you know, of Kenyoal reforestation, what are the values for communities, and what do they think, and how much they know about carbon sequestration markets, because it's us, NGOs or government agencies that are sort of fluent or more fluent in these types of mechanisms, but not necessarily communities. And they haven't had the opportunity to understand well these mechanisms, what it implies in terms of who gets the benefit. There are many, many questions, right? And it would be them thinking about this model. And then from your perspective, same as us, you know, Instituto de Montaña, we also learn, you know, we learn their positions, we learn about their ideas, and I will be always ready for surprises. No, who knows exactly what they may offer, but that's the point. No, it's a space for discussion, discussing these kinds of questions as you are posing.
If I can just add to that, just some of the students that are still here and some have left in our practicing sustainability course, they're actually looking at the Curriculum Valley where we have collaborations, and they're doing the science aspect of looking at, you know, if they were to do some re-wetting of the peatlands or some reforestation, what kind of carbon storage would that result in? And we're working with a consultant who does voluntary carbon offsets, the classes, to sort of see what, from a more technical piece, might be available. But the community has expressed interest in it, but there's a lot more work that would need to be done. But if we can invite you to the student presentations at one at the end of the semester.
I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing this work. It's super exciting and very interesting and inspiring. Paola and I are doing an independent study right now, thinking about transdisciplinary science, participatory action research, all of these kinds of collaborative kind of like methodologies and ways in which we co-produce knowledge. And so I'd love to hear you all talk a little bit more, reflect a little bit more about the challenges of those processes and like how you work through that. Because also, Jorge, hearing you talk about this question of like translation of concepts and like this bridging work that is necessary to achieve these kinds of really important goals that you have collectively with these projects about, for example, as well, like incorporating like 80% or in 80% of projects incorporating some sort of ancestral knowledge. Like, what does that look like in practice? And maybe you all can talk a little bit more about some of the challenges and some of the the practical strategies that you've employed to like really like move forward over time, this type of like deep transdisciplinary or like collaborative kind of work.
Right. I'd like to invite Mirela to talk about that, but just briefly say that the past experience that we had at the Instituto de Montaña with the whole set of processes you're referring to, it's been sort of like small scale in the sense that the project having the time and developing the methodologies, in depth, time with the communities, doing participatory action research. And that experience is now, which it was with 4 communities in the highlands of Lima in EBA, ecosystem-based adaptation. Now it's being scaled up to 150 more communities, and it has to happen quickly. And Mirela can talk to you about how difficult, not difficult, but it's just the realities, of these projects, how we have to run. And Mirela can talk more about that because they were dealing with these issues.
Yeah. All our partners are telling us that we need to pass from the handicraft to the fabric. So, I mean, they want more faster processes, and participation is built through trust building, and this takes time. So, I mean, we are forced in many aspects in order to go faster and further away, but we are not sure if this will really have an impact, the impact we are thinking about. But this first year will be a trial in Arequipa, and processes are already designed in order to reach the time goals and budget goals, of course, and we will see what comes. We will evaluate that after the first trial, and then perhaps have the chance to modify it for the next one, because there will be 3 calls in this project. I'm not sure if I reply the whole question.
That's great. Thank you very much. It's a huge challenge to scale up in such a way. And the time frame seems to be like a big challenge as well, of like how, like with your point on trust for participation. So like what participation actually means and how you build trust with diverse communities and partners across so many different geographies within Peru is significant.
Yeah, that's because local NGOs are also invited to work with communities for the option 1, funding option 1, because they know them, they already have this trust, in some cases perhaps built. But when you are new in a community, I mean, you need a lot of time. And of course, yeah.
It still is a real challenge. If we always talked in Instituto de Montaña, for years, okay, what we're doing is, we really like what we're doing in these communities, but the question is, how do we then move, there are 7,000 mountain communities in Peru, 7,000. And how do you reach out to effectively to more communities? There are, of course, a number of tools, it's from policy to good examples but in this case, we need to find out how to make operational what we have learned over the years. And in that regard, I think that, the presence of indigenous knowledge, mountain indigenous knowledge hub, like the Hatun TInkuy, where these kinds are discussed, could be, a very important point of reference for how to go about, scaling up these things or the exchanges. We don't know, but it's an interesting opportunity, to see how the Hatun TInkuy, the annual conference of mountain Andean communities, may be a way of influencing these other projects, or influencing the thinking of government, and policies. Who knows? There are lots of potentials there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are running out of time, but yeah, thank you so much. to the speakers for your presentation. It was really insightful. And we hope to extend this conversation in further spaces, of course. Thank you.
Thank you too.
See you next time.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Adios. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.